Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Understanding where your station in life is, what you're looking for down the line, as opposed to if you're 30 or if you're 60, two different points in your life of what you need, and you may need to see a very specific specialist in being able to transition your financial future into a distribution plan as opposed to an accumulation growth plan.
Welcome to the Income for Life Show. If you're looking for some common sense retirement planning ideas and want to hear how we make the complex financial world simple, then listen up so you can learn how you can stay retired. The Income for Life Show is powered by Folds of Honor, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational scholarships to the families of America's fallen and disabled service members. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Nelson and Nick Schilling.
Welcome to the Income for Life Show with your host, Matt and Nick, on what is becoming a very wet and soggy week here in the Midwest. We have been having quite a bit of rain here, but I guess it is springtime, so we should be kind of used to that here where we are in northeast Kansas. And Nick, I know that we've been battling through the rain and dealing with all the weather that we're having here, but I guess it could be 110 degrees like it's going to be here in about a month.
It can always be worse. This is one of the things where this stretch of about 20 days almost seems biblical.
Yes.
With the amount of
Yes,
rain
it
that they're
does.
forecasting. So hopefully everybody that is in the Midwest that's listening to this is staying dry, and forecasts tend to change, so hopefully it won't be as bad as as it expects, and everybody can get outside and golf and do whatever they want to do. But yeah, it's sloppy and soggy around here right now.
And just like you said, here in the Midwest, obviously, if you don't like the weather in the morning, just stick around till the afternoon because it's going to be changing in the afternoon. So if you're wherever you're listening right now, I hope that you are able to enjoy some spring weather. I know some of our friends and families that are down in the Texas area are getting pretty dangerously flooding and having some issues down there. So we hope everybody down there is able to stay safe and, of course, do your best to take care of yourself. We are absolutely pulling for you, and we're thinking of you. In today's show here on the Income for Life Show, we got a couple of really neat topics that we're going to go through today, Nick. And the first topic that we're going to go through, we have titled this one, Listening to the Money Doctor. So we're gonna take a look into the world of medicine and how some of those terminologies and language of medicines apply into the financial world. So there's four topics that we're going to talk about because we can learn some valuable lessons in that correlation. And it's a pretty important topic to go through, especially right now in today's world where we got a lot of COVID vaccine talk and we got a lot of should we wear masks and what's the CDC saying and all of these things that are in the press right now with COVID and what to do with the vaccines. We kind of thought that the idea of listening to the money doctor kind of applied, don't you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities between the processes that we take going into the healthcare field and similar to the financial field. So we're not going to be talking about if you should take a vaccine. There is just some similarities between the way that we interact with a doctor and then also some things that we can have a parallel to, things that we might want to think about when we're seeing a financial expert.
Absolutely.
As opposed to a medical expert. So we'll walk through 3 or 4 kind of generic things that we think apply and that we think are really close parallels that people like to think about and talk about.
Absolutely. And we are also going to have the topic today where we're going to dive into a little bit about inflation. We've been hearing a lot of language in the press, hyperinflation, or transitional hyperinflation. So we're going to dive into that a little bit as well, just because that process is happening in today's,
as we speak.
We speak right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the show as well. And then we got a great question that came in from Marie in Kansas City that we're going to go through that came into our IFL mailbag that I know, Nick, you and I both really like this question because it applies to so many people right now in today's retirement and in today's world. So we are going to go through that mailbag question a little bit later on in the show. But before we jump into our topic about listening to the money doctor, we always want to give a shout out to our friends at Folds of Honor. Folds of Honor powers and helps us out with the Income for Life show. And, of course, if you want to learn a little bit more about Folds of Honor, you can do it right through our website at incomeforlife.org. Those guys do amazing work. And like we always like to do, Nick, we want to make sure that we are letting everybody know how important Folds of Honor is. So thank you very much to the Folds of Honor crew. Our phone number is 888-228-8814. Again, that number is 888-228-8814. Feel free to give us a call anytime you want, and you can talk directly to either myself or to Nick, and we can answer any questions that you might have when it comes to proper retirement planning. And then one other group, Nick, that I think that you and I really want to give some extra credit to is our back team that of course helps us out with our podcast. That group is called Third Wheel Media, and they are absolutely amazing in what they do to help us get these podcasts out there to the world and to be able to position this in a way that really helps a lot of people out there. So, Nick, I think that we should absolutely, spend some time and just explain how important Third Wheel Media is to our Income for Life show.
Well, they've been a great partner. We've really enjoyed putting on these podcasts, and we couldn't do it the way that we do it without them. So if you're looking to do something like this, they've been great partners to us, and we really thank them. And we've really enjoyed the experience of trying to get some topics out there to our listeners, and they've been a huge part in allowing us to do it. So couldn't thank them enough, and look forward to a long, long time of us working with them.
Thank you very much to the whole team at Third Wheel Media. We appreciate what you do for us ongoing. You guys are incredible at what you do. Thank you again. Now, Nick, let's go ahead and jump into our topic of the day that is titled Listening to the Money Doctor. So what we're going to do is, if we take a look at the world of medicine, we can learn some valuable lessons that can be applied to our financial life. So we're going to go through 4 things that you often hear in just the medical world about going to see your doctor or getting a second opinion, for example, things like that, and how that could also kind of parallel into your retirement life and your retirement planning life. So the first topic and the first one of these on listening to the money doctor is, even if you feel fine, it's usually advisable to get a periodic checkup. I think everybody listening would agree that you need to go get that physical exam to make sure that everything is going fine. So most people that go to the doctor for a routine physical every year, not because necessarily they're feeling sick by any means, but because they just want to stay on top of any problem that may not be evident yet. So in the same way, everything might feel fine in your financial life, but sometimes just that periodic checkup could be helpful for pointing out problems that maybe you don't see coming. So let's talk about that periodic checkup, but from the retirement side. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a huge deal, and especially in the medical side of it, trying to have that preemptive and precautionary checkups that help make sure that everything is on course is a necessity. Not that we don't always miss those things.
Absolutely.
Some of us could be better at going in annually and getting those physicals and making sure that we're on the path that we think we are. We can look in the mirror and say, well, maybe we aren't. But going to a doctor and going to an expert can really help understand what's underneath just the visual part of it. And the same thing with the financial side. When the markets are going up like they have over the last decade and a half, sometimes we can get a little bit blasé of things are going well. I don't really need anybody to look at.
I don't need a checkup right now. Things are fine.
But that can be the perfect time, depending on where you are in your stage of life. As we get older, the more we need medical checkups, typically. And as we get older and are starting approaching different transitioning periods of our financial life, planning for retirement, into retirement, the more that we need to frequently check to make sure that we are on track to where we think we want to go. And having a checkup with your financial doctor, your financial professional, is a huge piece in doing that. Even when you don't think you do, that's the time when you need to go check, make sure everything is right, and make sure everything's set up for what could be around the corner, not what's just visible right now.
Absolutely. And that physical checkup is a prevention. It is designed to go in to not only make sure to get your validation that you're okay, but it is literally a time where you can talk to your physician or your financial planner, whatever it might be, of what do you foresee? What's kind of on my radar that I should be looking at down the road here in the next 6 months or a year, or until my next checkup, things like that. So it is designed to not only give you some peace of mind that, hey, I'm on the right track potentially, but it's also the time to say, well, you're not 30 years old anymore.
Correct.
You may want to start doing blank, whatever that blank is. And in the financial world, like we talk about all the time, that what should you be doing as you're getting close to retirement is that retirement shift. Maybe you need to start shifting from the 100% thinking about accumulation in the markets to how do I set up my guaranteed lifetime income? So that's that conversation that you would be having in this periodic checkup.
Annual advice at the doctor might be to change your diet, work out a little bit more, all the same things that we hear all the time. On the financial side, it might be, well, increase your savings or use different vehicles to save in different ways for a down the line need. So it's the same thing that we need to talk to somebody, get an opinion on what we think we need to do to set ourselves up for not just the next year, but ongoing.
Absolutely. So that periodic checkup in your retirement planning applies both in your physical health and your financial health. So that is number one. Even if you feel fine, it's advisable to get that periodic checkup. Let's go ahead now, Nick, and move on to number two. The number two on the listening to your money doctor is sometimes you need a prescription. Right? So sometimes you might be sick, but completely capable of treating yourself, and maybe you have a cold or a little bit of a fever. You can go get an over-the-counter medication and you can be fine. But suppose that cold turns into a bronchitis or a pneumonia of some sort. So now you need a prescription to address that problem, and you can't get that on your own. You can't just go down to your local, Dillon's or Walmart and get that. So in your financial life, there's a lot of things you can do yourself as well. With the equivalent of that over-the-counter solution, you can balance your checkbook maybe, for example. You can manage your household budget or maybe even pick those 401k investments without that professional help. But sometimes you might encounter an issue that you need that professional guidance, like how to handle a tricky tax situation or, how to best use your savings to create a retirement income for yourself or what to do with an inheritance. So the idea and the analogy of sometimes you need a prescription absolutely applies to your financial and your retirement plan.
Sometimes when you go in, a physician will give you something that you go in knowing that you're going to need. If it's some sort of virus or bacterial thing, you know that you're going to need it. In the financial side, you're probably going to see somebody because you need something that you're maybe not understanding what you need or how to get access to it and what is needed and why. So on the financial side of the world, we're looking at what strategies are available, what products and vehicles are available to get you down the road and what you need to do to help you accomplish what your thing is that you need to accomplish that you came in to talk about. Lots of times we have access to certain things that the general public might not be aware of, and we can get that at a decent clip for anybody that comes in. So the prescription in this is what strategy, what product, what thinking do we need to do, what changes do we need to make in order to accomplish the thing that we need to accomplish.
Absolutely. And just like on the medical side, there could be an illness that you have, like that cold or that flu, and you know exactly what you need to help with that, but you need somebody to order it for you.
I need somebody to write a prescription for me.
You need that prescription. You can call your doctor and they're going to say probably something to the tune of, hey, come in so we can make sure. Or they can call you in a prescription, whatever it is. But that person has to do that for you. You may know exactly what you need, but they have to be able to call that in for you. So that's a very, very neat way to do that parallel, because sometimes you need that prescription. And the tricky tax situation is a perfect example of that. Or you're 55 years old and you're like, okay, I need to start mentally shifting into a pension style lifetime income plan, but I can't necessarily go just grab that on my own. I need to go get that prescription to talk about it.
Understand which one's appropriate for you.
Absolutely. So again, number two on listening to the money doctor was sometimes you need a prescription. Makes complete sense. Let's go ahead and jump into number three. And this one is one that, Nick, you and I talk about all the time here on the Income for Life show, and it is different doctors have different specialties.
Yes.
Okay? Depending on your medical needs, you might need a doctor for a certain specialty. If you're a middle-aged man with heart trouble, you wouldn't need to go to a gynecologist for that, right? But if you need a shoulder surgery, you're also not going to go see a respiratory specialist.
Correct.
So the idea about having a specialist in a field is huge, because it seems that in the financial world, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that certain advisors might have different specialties. Okay? So some advisors might specialize in young families whose primary concerns are, paying off debt or saving for college or, something along those lines. That's a completely different specialty from someone who works with retirees to help them make sure that they don't run out of money before they die.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit, Nick, if you would, about the different types of specialties when it comes to retirement planning, financial planning, and how that correlates into, the medical field.
Well, and even the two different industries, as a patient on the medical side, we're very accustomed to being referred out to a specialist.
Exactly.
So that's a normal process in our mind. We're used to it. We go into our general practitioner and I got knee problems and they might send me to an orthopedic person. It's probably expected me going in. I'm expecting that to happen. It's very common for that to happen. On the financial side, unfortunately, that is not as common. Typically, advisors are trying to hold on to that client and not refer them out to a specialty person, even though what they need might not be their specific forte.
Absolutely.
So it's not, as a client in the financial process, in the financial treadmill that gets us down the line, it's not as common for people to be referred out. And there's many different reasons for that. But as a client, you got to understand that it's very common in the medical side, not as common in the financial side. So you got to go in and ask the right questions, understand what certain financial professionals do and how they differ from other ones, and then also understand what your needs and objectives are in the station and style you are in your lifetime.
That is huge. That what you just said, Nick, just literally hit the nail on the head, because we see it all the time on referring out to a specialist in all capacities, not only just in the health field, but a general contractor to build a house. They're going to refer out the electric work.
Yep.
They're going to refer out the concrete work, whatever it might be. It seems like for the most part, every other team that requires referrals all work together.
Correct.
And you as the consumer or the client expect that to happen as well, right?
Yes.
So whenever you do, like you said, you had that knee pain, for example, and you go into your general doctor and they said you should go see an orthopedic person, you expect that. You're going in sometimes with the expectation of who do I need to go to next?
Of just trying to get the referral.
Just trying to get the referral. But in the financial world, people don't do that typically. They go to their person and then they don't ask the questions of, okay, who is a specialist in this? Who is a specialist in that? And that financial advisor typically will say, don't worry about it. I can handle it.
Our team's got it. Yep.
Our team's got it. We can do it, okay? And that doesn't always work.
Correct. It's one of the things that the biggest transition in any of our financial lives is transitioning from getting a paycheck or earning a paycheck to having to have your savings make that paycheck for you. So transitioning from working into retirement, and that is a very specific thing. There are advisors that are solely focused on helping you grow that retirement nest egg. And then there are specialists that help you use that retirement nest egg and turn that into a distribution plan, into an income plan that you can't outlive. And different people focus on different things and they do things in different ways. So understanding where your station in life is, what you're looking for down the line, as opposed to if you're 30 or if you're 60, two different points in your life of what you need. And you may need to see a very specific specialist in being able to transition your financial future into a distribution plan as opposed to an accumulation growth plan. And not that these two specialists and experts can't work together, but having that specialist to give you advice and to set up that plan and work with your other experts is a needed thing that unfortunately our industry doesn't do that well. And it's on the clients, and hopefully we're educating a little bit to ask the right questions, really understand what your current people do and don't do well, and then search for firms that do what you need specifically.
Absolutely. And I literally just had a conversation with one of our clients earlier this week where the concern was exactly that. I've had my person, my financial person, for quite a while, but I need someone now that is specifically trained and ready for my next transition into life. So as she's talking about the transition from the accumulation over to the distribution, she understands
Yes.
that is a very separate sort of a referral, if you would. And she's having to obviously go and try to do her homework on that. And that's exactly what we talk about all the time right here. That transition or that retirement shift over from the accumulation to the distribution is something that you need to take very seriously.
And a key indicator of you may need to look for another specialist is if you're in that stage, 50, 55, 60, transitioning, and your advisor and their team are not having this conversation with you, they're not bringing this up to you proactively of how we're going to start to tweak your investment plan.
Start shifting you over
And having this conversation at whatever frequency you meet with them. If you're not hearing this, that probably tells you that's not in their wheelhouse. That is not the way that they think about it. So you may need to look for other specialists on your own, and we can coordinate that.
And it's amazing that you just said that, Nick, because you and I have had conversations with people that have reached out to us to start to work towards this shift that we're talking about here. And after we explain who we are, what we do, how we do it, things like that, and how we can work with them, one of the things that we often hear, and when I say often, it's almost every time, is, where were you guys 5 years ago? And how come my existing person didn't tell me? And so that's what we're talking about these different specialties. Yep. It cannot apply any more aggressively, if you would, than in the financial circle. Correct. So yes, that also applies with the specialist when it comes to your medical. Everybody accepts that process. You need to accept that process in your financial life as well.
That baton handoff in the financial world, unfortunately, doesn't happen as easily and as swiftly. So you might have to take some of that on your shoulders, ask the right questions, explore a little bit on your own, and we're here to help.
Absolutely. So that was number 3 as we are discussing listening to the money doctor. Again, different doctors have different specialties. So let's go ahead and jump into number 4 real quick. And this is the last of these that we are going to discuss today on the Income for Life show. Again, our phone number is 888-228-8814. Give us a call. We'll gladly go through these in more detail specifically for you at any time you would like. But number 4 that we have, Nick, is sometimes a second opinion can be helpful. And this kind of ties into number 3 a little bit that we were just talking about being referred out to a specialist. But if you get a certain type of a diagnosis, you might seek a second opinion to confirm the diagnosis or get another perspective on that particular type of recommended treatment. Everybody understands how that process works. And in the financial world, you might hear an opinion from one advisor, and you may not be sure if that's really getting the best advice for you, or you just, afraid maybe you're getting a sales pitch, right? So if that's the case, that second opinion never hurts.
No.
So we tell people on our show all the time, get that second opinion, talk to other people. Now, sometimes that can get kind of confusing because obviously in the financial world, a lot of people are all trying to say they're right, that other person's wrong, things like that. So that second opinion can be tricky, but you just have to go about it in a way that makes sense to you.
Well, and it's one of those things where, getting a second opinion, having more eyes on it and more thoughts to it is always a benefit. But really what it comes down to is it's not just don't go get random second opinions all the time. If you like where you're at and what you're doing, keep it going. But when you come to a transition point in your life, that's when you got to start making sure that you're seeking out other ideas, other ways of doing things, and other people taking a look at your situation, not just the advisor group that you've had for the last 15, 20, 30 years, but going and looking out and proactively searching for, I want to get some other team's eyes on this, is a huge benefit because they may have a different specialty, they may have access to different strategies and products, and they may just look at things a little bit differently than your current group does. So that process becomes paramount when you're thinking about and in a transitionary time in your financial life, anytime. It's always good to, we could say, go just get a second pair of eyes on it, have somebody else give you another opinion on it. That's great. But when it comes to transitioning times in your financial life, that's when it's the most important time to make sure you are getting another set of eyes on that, another thought process to it, and just seeing what else is out there.
Absolutely.
And making sure that they're understanding what your new goals and objectives are in the next stage of your life, and not just having you rocking and rolling on the same thing that you've been doing for the last 25 years, thinking that that's the way that you want to live your life for the next 25 years.
And we have people all the time, Nick, that you and I talk to that they call us up for that second opinion, and we do a deep dive into what they got, and we very well could come back and say, hey, what you're doing is great. Keep doing it. Right? So we would maybe tweak a little thing here and there, but overall, you're doing really good in what you're doing. Congratulations. Keep that going. And the sigh of relief that people have knowing that somebody looked at it and said, yeah, I think you're good. That's pretty important, don't you think?
Correct. And then it's typically putting milestones out there as to over the next 3 to 5 years, here's some things that I would look for as checkpoints, and here's some things that when you need another call, when you want to have another conversation, here's the time periods of your life where we would look at it and say, check in with us. Because these are the things when we want to start implementing maybe some strategic changes or tweaks into this plan that's already going well. You're doing what you need to do to keep you on plan. But there's going to be some obstacles coming down the road and some transitionary times that we want to check back in with you.
Absolutely. And I think that fourth one right there of sometimes that second opinion can be helpful. I think everybody would agree. And it doesn't matter if it's medical. It doesn't matter if it's financial. Whatever the scenario is, getting a second, you're doing the roof on your house, whatever it might be, getting that second opinion is always going to be helpful. So again, as we're talking about this topic of listening to the money doctor, just to kind of do a quick rundown of those four. Number one, even if you feel fine, usually advisable to get that periodic checkup. Number two, sometimes you need a prescription. Number three, different doctors have different specialties. And number four, sometimes a second opinion can be helpful.
Listen closely because there's a new financial tool that you need to know about. It's being described as the CD Buster. Every year, scores of people lock their money up in CDs that pay less than 1%. It's a great way to lose money safely because you can't keep up with inflation, and that spells disaster for a retiree. So the Income for Life team is excited to announce a new multi-year guaranteed annuity that pays up to 3.1% annually and can be purchased online. It's never been easier to get this kind of return on your money, and it can be done from your smartphone or computer in just minutes. This opportunity is insured dollar for dollar, is available in 4-year or 6-year lengths, and you even get 5% free withdrawals if you need to take money out. CDs can't do that. To find out more and to get this guaranteed annuity online right now, just go to incomeforlife.org and click on the banner, or check out the link in the description of today's show.
Nick, as we talked about earlier in the show, we are going to be discussing a little bit about this concern that everybody has right now all across the country about inflation and hyperinflation and the transitory transitional inflation. And I know that it seems like whenever you turn on any news channel or listen to any show, they're talking about how not only is inflation coming, but inflation is here. And there's a lot of concern about that, especially in the retirement world, because everything that costs a certain amount today is not going to be costing that same amount here in the very near future. So let's do a little bit of a dive into inflation, a little bit of these terminologies, and talk a little bit to everybody that's listening right now, how this could impact them, not only in the near future, but maybe even to the years to come.
Correct. And I think one thing that you said, Matt, is, for the longest time when we've had these artificially low interest rates, people have talked about, well, we don't want inflation to happen. It's becoming this buzzword that is now over the last, I'd say, week to 10 days in the news, this national media buzz about inflation. Well, for many of us, we've kind of felt that prices have been inching upwards over the past 24 months or more.
Right, absolutely.
Right now, we're seeing it at the pump. There's supply chain issues around that are causing prices to go up. So this is a natural thing that's happening just because of the situation that we came from, where everything was locked down, into an opening back up. So Matt, you used the term kind of transitory or transitioning inflation. Some pundits will say, well, don't worry about that because we're just kind of getting back from a lockdown period.
It's a short-term thing.
It's a short-term thing. So as we get through this and everything kind of smooths out, things will get back to normal. But as we've been talking about on this show, one, inflation has probably been here longer than we've actually seen it and felt it. The pressure of inflation in home prices, it's going crazy when you can take out mortgages. And I think the question that we'll talk about later on from one of our viewers talks about this, but the home buying market has been going crazy lately.
Oh, it's ridiculous
because
right now.
Interest rates are at historical lows. Mortgages are at historical low interest rates. People are using loans to use it as opposed to taking money out of their savings and investment accounts to do it when you can borrow at such cheap interest rates. It's causing homes to be bought up and built like nobody's business, which is also causing lumber shortages and a bunch of material shortages, which are causing inflationary price effects to what we buy day in and day out, from meats to milks to wood to gas. All of that stuff. When we go to the grocery store, I don't feel like I'm paying less than I did 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
Or last year. So inflation has always had this pressure. I think some of these pundits are correct that in the short term right now, as we go through this transitioning period of opening up the economy, not just domestic economy, but the world economy, there's going to be some increased pressure. We've just had reports that April and March in, the consumer price index, the inflation index that we look at, has just jumped to its highest rate since 2008. They've had some of the worst months of inflation tick up that we've seen in a long, long time. That is what we're talking about when we say, well, prices are being affected right now. And it is, and that's an ongoing thing that as consumers, we need to be aware of, but also as investors and retirees or potential retirees, we got to look at, well, what is this inflationary pressure going to do to my investments? Well, in the short term, we're seeing this inflationary pressure cause short-term market volatility. And the reason that is because when interest rates and inflation start to tick up, all of a sudden that becomes a worry. So this becomes, well, things aren't going to be the way that they were yesterday, tomorrow and down the road. We got to start adjusting. So there can be some panic selling in the market, but the fundamentals underneath it are really pretty fundamental.
Absolutely.
Not to be joking there, but they are
exactly right.
Increased inflation and interest rates causes us a new interest rate by which we're going to value companies on a go-forward basis. And one of the things, Matt, that you and I have talked about ad nauseum in many of these things is throughout the pandemic, and even before that, but really the pandemic kind of put a spotlight on it, is we've had massive growth of very few significant firms. Large firms. We've talked about before that 5 firms in the S&P 500, so an index that comprises 500 firms, 5 firms comprise over 25% of its value. We're talking the Microsofts, Facebooks,
the
Amazon, Google,
Google,
these massive firms that have risen exponentially in the pandemic because their technology, remote access in learning and all that kind of stuff, firms that were using all of these things have caused them to grow exponentially in the pandemic. Well, also part of that growth is when you look forward to their earnings, we don't think that any of these firms are going to go away. We're still going to buy stuff on Amazon. We're going to still use Microsoft software and computers and all that kind of stuff. That stuff's not going away. Facebook ain't going away. But when you look forward at their forward earnings, when you increase the interest rate underneath that and you recalculate it, that changes the value of that company on a forward-looking basis. So then all of a sudden, not just the knee-jerk, oh, inflation's happening, let's sell. It's the actual analysis of it, the calculation of it changes the value of that company, its price to earnings ratio, and its book value on a go-forward basis. So now the big investment firms are recalibrating the way that they look at these firms and many other ones on a go-forward basis. But the ones that are hit the most are the ones that have been inflated the most.
Which are those 5.
So if 5 have over a quarter of the effect of the S&P 500, when they recalculate and reanalyze those firms and they readjust, that's going to affect the larger marketplace significantly.
Absolutely. And if you're sitting there saying right now, well, I don't have any Facebook stock, or I don't have any Amazon or Alphabet, I don't have any of that stock. Okay, I understand what you're talking about, but those companies are so big inside the S&P 500 that will affect you even if you don't have direct relations with those stocks.
In most circumstances, if we have investments in IRAs or 401ks or 403bs or 457 plans from employers, you are investing in these things. You have mutual funds or exchange-traded funds that are investing in things as simple as the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones.
Absolutely.
These overall large indexes that we see in the Chiron, the scroll on the bottom of the news page. So you might not directly own stock in some of these companies, but you do indirectly have exposure.
There's the word, exposure to these companies.
And
yes.
these companies have an inordinate exposure to the overall marketplace, an inordinate effect on the overall marketplace because of the inflationary aspect that has happened with depressed interest rates, easy monetary policy, just flooding the market with stimulus, and everything else that's happened has caused these few firms to have an inordinate amount of pressure in the overall thing. It's caused the tide to rise in many circumstances, but when the tide pulls back, it can pull back huge if inflationary pressures come. And that's not even talking about if there is actual inflation that we're worried about and that the Federal Reserve is worried about in the long term. Well, we could see a change in the way the Fed attacks that, the way the Fed goes about looking at how they want to control actual inflationary pressure. And if we start to tighten up monetary policy, meaning purposely raise interest rates, raising interest rates then causes more people to save. If your CD is paying, 2% as opposed to 50 basis points, I might save. And then that takes money out of the supply chain. You're saving it in a bank or in an investment, and you're not spending it. The money supply isn't as great. Or it might cause them to sell debt instruments in the marketplace as opposed to buy them that they are right now. Buying bonds that the Fed is doing right now increases the money supply. Selling bonds to the marketplace causes us to give the Fed cash, which then takes money out of market circulation. In an effect, it's all digital, but in an effect, that's what happens. So when they tighten monetary policy, that's something that we want to look forward to. Right now, we're seeing almost media exposure to inflationary pressure. We'll have to look and see what the Fed is going to do if they're going to change their policy, which Fed Chair Jerome Powell has not said they're going to do. But when they do, that's going to cause even more market turbulence. And basically what we come down to when, Matt, you and I think about inflation, when you are looking at your investments, when you are looking at your lifetime long-term income that you need to set up in retirement, that income plan, that retirement plan better have hedges for inflation in there to compensate as prices increase for the decades that you're going to be in retirement as we all live longer, and that income plan and investment plan have to work in coordination. They have to be in lockstep to be able to make sure that you have the needed pressure releases in that plan as things change, inflation and interest rates being a huge one.
You hit it on the head just a second ago there, Nick, where you said the example of people are living longer. So it used to be back whenever Social Security was created, decades ago, set it up to income start at 65, but the life expectancy was 67. So now when you're retiring at 65, 66, 67, whatever it might be, life expectancy is deep into your 80s and a lot of times much further.
Correct.
That pressure is even more and more and more on you. So if you are about to retire and you're like, okay, I'm concerned about inflation, because a lot of people are. They're hearing about it. Some people are saying, yes, this inflation is really going to kick our butt. Other people are saying, oh, it's just going to be for a couple months and then it's going to be over. Don't worry about it. I don't necessarily agree with either one of those. What I'm concerned about is it's here and it could be aggressive. We don't know what the government and what the Fed's going to be doing to try to curb that, like you just said, Nick, but it's here.
Correct.
And you have to build that in to your retirement income, especially because when you're not working anymore, and you're living off of your savings and you got your Social Security account, which, rarely gets over 40% of what you're needing anyway. You have all of this other asset, hopefully, that you built up, that has to be built in with the understanding that inflation is going to happen. We don't know the extent, but it's going to happen. So you got to be able to hedge that, like you said.
Long-term inflation is a guarantee, basically.
There's no way around it.
It's going to happen. You need to be prepared for it. Short-term inflationary pressure like we're having right now, and what the news is blowing up about, is and can be transitioning or transitory, but we got to start to keep an eye on what the Fed's going to do in response to it. But as a general rule, gas is going to probably cost more in 2035 when our listeners are retired than it is right now, even though the national average is now above $3 and maybe it goes down and it kind of goes all around. But if you want to travel and see the grandkids, you better be able to afford milk and gas and all of those things that are needed, airline tickets and everything that becomes ancillary to some of these underlying commodity increases. Your plan has to be dynamic and flexible enough to give you guaranteed income that you can't outlive, but allow that income and your outside investments to grow safely so that you're not losing cents on the dollar every year as inflation kind of creeps forward.
You've got mail.
Now let's jump into our question of the day, Nick, and we got a fantastic question that came into us from Marie in Kansas City, and this is one that as we were reading this today, Nick, we really like this question because it applies.
We've gotten it multiple times.
We've got it so many times, and it's something that is on the mind of so many people. So again, this came from Marie in Kansas City. Marie, thank you very much for submitting this question into the IFL mailbag, and if you are listening now and you have a question that you would like to submit to Nick and I, where we can absolutely try our best to read it online and read it on the air, you can send that question to info@incomeforlife.org. Again, that is info@incomeforlife.org. And we'll go through all the questions that we get during the week, and we try to pull the questions that a lot of people are asking. And it's a common theme. And this one, Nick, is really good. So let me read this.
And any question that we get, we respond to directly.
Absolutely.
We might not read it on the air, but we respond.
We'll get back to you with your question.
We want to get back to you and answer your specific question. We try to pull one out of the bag that has broad applicability to many people. Maybe we've gotten it multiple times, or just because of circumstances right now, we know what's on a lot of people's mind, and I think this one is a big one.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you clarified that, because we do get a lot of emails that do come in with people that have very specific questions to their situation.
Yes.
And we will absolutely answer those and get right back to those people and talk to them on a one-on-one individual basis. But as those questions come in that we feel are a little broad in nature, that a lot of people are interested in learning, those are the ones that we were going to pull out and talk on the air. But again, that email is info@incomeforlife.org. You can absolutely submit any question you want there, and we'll do our best to respond back to you as quickly as we can. But let's talk about Marie in Kansas City. And here's Marie's question, Nick. Marie says, I wasn't planning to move, but my dream home just came on the market. My current home is paid off, but I'd have to take out a mortgage if I bought this one. I'm retiring in 5 years, so is it a bad idea for me to have a mortgage? So first of all, Marie, fantastic question. And this is a very common question that we get because the housing market is just off the chart right now. And mainly because people are not able to get the supplies to build, so they have to buy. So a lot of people are really, selling their houses at a really high number.
Yeah.
And Marie's question really applies into that. So obviously, looks like, let's start at the beginning, Marie. It looks like that your dream home just came on the market. First of all, fantastic.
Good for you.
For finding that dream home. Current house is paid off. Also, kudos to you. Fantastic for doing that. Your concern, though, is it bad for you to have a mortgage, considering where you are so close to retirement? You're 5 years away. So, Nick, let's talk about that. Is it a good idea for Marie to take out a mortgage when she's 5 years away from retirement?
Well, that question comes with a lot of other things.
A lot of variables
that have to go into the conversation. Typically, we would look at a mortgage as an additional and can be expensive fixed expense.
And this sounds like would be an additional because her current house is already paid off.
So many times when you kind of look generically at retirement planning, you want to eliminate as many fixed expenses as you possibly can, especially big ones like a mortgage, to clear up some options and flexibility in that plan. But now is such a unique time, Matt, that you mentioned in the lead up to this, interest rates are historically low. Mortgages are historically low and easy to access for people to be able to do it. And the housing market is booming. So you might be able to sell your current residence and use that money for a big old down payment on that you might not be able to get in 5 years or whatever down the line. So it becomes a unique experience that somebody looks through. Basically, we'd have the conversation with you, Marie. What are your current fixed expenses? What is your current investment and income situation? And then what does that look like in the coming 1, 5, 10 years down the line? And can we create enough guaranteed income to cover your fixed expenses and all the needs, goals, and wants that you have in retirement to where this just becomes a great opportunity to take advantage of the current market environment to get your dream home? Or is it something that we have to reevaluate and maybe tweak some things around to make that dream happen? But it really comes down to, where's your income going to come from to cover this additional, probably significant fixed expense that you're going to have? How long do you want to have it? What type of mortgages are there out there? Do you want a 30-year mortgage when you're going to be in retirement that long? Can you afford a 10, 15-year mortgage to pay it off a little bit quicker? Can we use different things to pay this down a little bit quicker, different strategies in the short term to then free you up for a longer retirement structure? But it really comes down to the old rules of thumb are don't have a mortgage in retirement. Doesn't apply to everybody. Everybody's situations are different, and we'd love and will have a conversation with you, Marie, about what your specific thing is, because this could be a great opportunity.
This very well could be. And your question is it a bad idea for me to have a mortgage? Well, it depends on your situation. It depends on kind of how you're already set up. But what I would tell Marie is just like everybody right now that is in the process of selling their home to purchase another home. Everybody is, saying, I am able to sell my house for so much more right now than I normally could. That is exactly right. But also, it works the other way as well. When you're buying a home, you're going to pay more because that other person selling that home is doing exactly what you're doing, selling your home.
And this dream home might be in her dream area and her dream lot with access to the things that she wants. So it may be more expensive than her current home. But maybe it will have less variable costs going forward. Maybe she doesn't have to fix it up much. Maybe it's newer. Maybe some of those costs that come down the line when we have our old house paid off and some expenses all of a sudden creep up. The roof, the heater, the plumbing, all of those things that kind of creep up on us. Maybe this new home will have a lot more safety and security with some of those alarming expenses that come up with this thing, and we can literally structure an income plan that covers this fixed expense of a mortgage and the insurance that comes along with it a lot better than we can of, well, my current house, I can get a great price for it, but I don't know if I need to get a new driveway or a new roof and all that kind of stuff is coming down the line. Maybe this new house will alleviate a lot of those pressures.
Absolutely. So, Marie, thank you very much for submitting that question. We will get back to you, and we will go through this and get a little bit more detailed in what you have available and what your retirement plan looks like right now to help you with that decision. So, Marie in Kansas City, thank you so much for submitting that question to the Income for Life mailbag. And again, if you have a question that you would like for us to answer, either in person or over the phone or right here on the Income for Life show, simply submit that question to info@incomeforlife.org, or you can simply give us a call at 888-228-8814, and you can schedule a time to visit with either Nick or myself, and we can walk through this over the phone and then get some additional information out to you over email or via FedEx. But as we wrap up our show today, Nick, like we typically do at the end of all of our Income for Life shows, we always like to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world. We always talk about our world champion Kansas City Chiefs. We sometimes talk about our Kansas City Royals. We always like to talk a little bit of a sports theme kind of on the end. And I believe right now, if I'm correct, with our Kansas City Chiefs and with all the NFL teams out there, I think rookie camps have started up, and people are starting to kind of get a good idea of what they have moving into the next year with the young kids.
There's excitement after the draft, as always. People are starting to work out how they're going to do in position, and maybe some free agency is going to happen. So, as always with football, there's always something going on and something for the sports networks to talk about. But right now, we're getting into golf season.
Oh, yes.
So we've already had one major, got another one coming up. this weekend.
It's the PGA Tour that starts Thursday.
Yep, PGA Championship. So
That'll be
fun in South Carolina, and it'll be interesting. Hopefully they get better weather than we have here, and they can stay dry, and we can have some good golf on TV to watch.
And it's so much fun to be able to watch not only those guys on the PGA Tour and how amazing they can do, but also on the football side. Obviously, we got the basketball with the NBA championships. That's getting ready to get going with the playoffs. There's those new play-in games that are coming up this week, which is kind of neat. But there's just a lot of activity going on. But, like we always talk about right here, since it is kind of the off season, we always want to, extend that opportunity for our MVP, Mr. Patrick Mahomes, to always join the Income for Life show and talk a little bit about how things are going with him. So, Patrick, if you're listening, you're always welcome. Looks like we missed you again this week, but that's okay. We'll try to get to you next time.
It's a busy guy in the summer. Yeah.
Busy guy in the summer. That's okay. But as we wrap up today's Income for Life show, we hope that you got some good information as we discuss the correlation from listening to the Money Doctor and how it applies into your financial and retirement plan. Also, our discussions about inflation and hyperinflation and how that could affect you. And again, Marie in Kansas City, fantastic question. So as we wrap up today, thank you very much for listening in today on the Income for Life show. Again, powered by Folds of Honor. If you have any questions that you would like for us to answer, of course, please call us at 888-228-8814. Again, that number is 888-228-8814. From all of us on our team at Income for Life, have yourself a great rest of your day, and bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Income for Life show. If you have any questions about something we talked about today or want to get in touch with the Income for Life team, give us a call to 888-228-8814. That's 888-228-8814. You can also go online to incomeforlife.org and check the description of today's show for any relevant resources and contact information. You can also find the podcast on all major podcasting apps, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and many more locations. The Income for Life show is powered by Folds of Honor, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational scholarships to the families of America's fallen and disabled service members. For more information, visit foldsofhonor.org. Information provided on today's show is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information is obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified professional before taking any action.